Many women think that the day of their wedding will be the happiest day of their lives. Due to a decision the husband made, one bride's wedding day ended up being the most embarrassing day of her life. What's worse is that the startling tale was afterward carried on every television channel. Sean McCarthy, one of the guests at the wedding, appeared on a British talk show and joyfully reported the events to the entire world. To go through the difficulty of preparing a wedding just to end the relationship as a whole, there must be a compelling cause. Let's go over what happened. Similar to America, Great Britain offers a large number of talk programs with entertaining star guests. One such show is the Norton Show. Aside from Graham Norton's occasional quips, celebrities appear on the program to discuss their movies or other endeavors. The fact that the show isn't just about the well-known people he invites is one of the features that the viewers adore. Graham instead devised a way for regular people to get some airtime too. Before the performance ends, Graham Norton gives spectators a chance to sit in a large red chair. For those who have the guts to speak in front of the cameras and share a captivating tale, the seat is intended. When Graham rates the storyteller, this special edition becomes even more entertaining. If he enjoys the tale, they can tell it in its entirety to the audience's amusement. Graham will flip the chair around, so the person falls on their back if he finds the tale intolerable for whatever reason. Sean McCarthy, an Irishman who had attended the wedding of a lifetime, is the person who made the decision to accept the challenge. Although there are many reasons why weddings are exciting, this was not the joyous occasion you might anticipate. Thankfully for him, Sean wasn't close to the couple and didn't feel a strong enough emotional connection to them to be upset by the absurd turn of events. In addition, Sean said he dislikes such gatherings because he isn't the most sociable person. In the end, he will probably be happy he went, if only to have a wild tale to tell. Let's examine what happened on that crucial day. Sean said the ceremony was lovely and went off without a hitch. Floating down the aisle was the bride. The couple exchanged vows. Everyone applauded as the newlyweds moved through the rows of family members. Everyone gathered at a dining area to eat after the ceremony. Speeches being made at this time were terrible. The groom had a complex plan behind everything that was about to happen, which was something no one could have predicted. The big secret will then be revealed. It turned out that the groom had discovered a tragic truth about his wife earlier than the wedding. He was informed by a number of people that she had cheated on him with numerous men. Even worse, all of these men attended the wedding and some of them were his friends. The groom's temper started to flare, but he chose to remain composed rather than call off the wedding. He immediately came up with a strategy to win back his soon-to-be wife right then and there. The groom had to maintain his composure if his plan was to succeed, despite his sudden hatred for the woman he had just pledged his life to. He snuck off earlier that day to locate where her numerous suitors were sitting, while the bride was busy and contently getting ready for the wedding. He put a red dot underneath each of their plates to show who they were. Although it might seem like a pointless thing to do, the groom was planning a surprise that he could use later. The group got ready to deliver a speech after everyone had found their tables and seats. He got everyone's attention by announcing that they would first play a game. Everyone had to stand up for him. The groom then asked if everyone had turned their empty plates upside down after the guests had done this. He told those who had a red dot under their plate to remain standing, and those who didn't have a red dot should sit down. The tension caused by the groom's unusual request gradually spread among the wedding guests. Even though the red dots were strange, as soon as people sat down, things grew stranger. As the guests sat down, they scanned the room to see who was still standing. It was obvious that only the small number of men who were left standing, not all of them, just a few. The bride most likely made the first 2+2 connection. When the groom revealed that each of the men standing had had an affair with his new wife, shock swept through the room. All of the men and the bride turned red with embarrassment. Why would the groom proceed with the wedding if he knew this was the question on everyone's mind? He intended to have the marriage declared null and void later that day due to adultery. It was already too late when the bride started to cry. Without saying anything further, the groom walked away. Let's count how many men survived this entire ordeal. The large number of men who are still standing is one of the reasons the groom's scheme was so successful. If there had been only a few men left standing, it would have still been a good idea, but it wouldn't have had the same impact. Instead, There are an incredible 8 men present at the reception who were confronted for having an affair with the bride. The guests remained stunned as the bride's parents tried to comfort her. Knowing that the accusations had to be true, everyone continued to focus on the bride. As she was speechless, and as the surprise subsided, guests began grabbing bottles from the center of the table. After the party ended, the guests made an effort to collect themselves. Given that everyone would think of that day whenever they saw the groom's bride, the groom had certainly gotten his sweet revenge. The rest of the night was awkward, to put it mildly. It was up to the guests to decide whether to support the bride by remaining or leaving right away. Although she may have had some close friends, there was no denying that she had made poor decisions. Additionally, anyone traveling from outside the city would not have paid for it. Then there was the problem with the gifts. Do they leave their gifts for the embarrassed bride, or do they grab them on the way out? Despite how odd that is, the groom continued the wedding. It's also important to point out that the bride was prepared to wed a man after she was aware she had not been faithful to. Does this raise the question of her true love for him? If so, what followed? Knowing that she didn't really deserve him, did she make an effort to win him back, or did she leave him alone? Since everyone was so engrossed in a story, Sean was unable to respond to any of these inquiries. Let's see how Sean's story was received by everyone on the show right now. Sean survived the entire narrative without the red chair being turned. In addition, he received support from both the audience and the famous guests. Sean was formally given permission to exit the chair flip. Some of the audience members stared around in awe while others found the story to be amusing. Even though nothing could compare to actually seeing such a horrific event, just hearing the story alarmed the crowd. The host, Norton, had the best response out of all of them. Graham's wide eyes and open mouth reveal how shocked he was to learn the news. You'd think he'd been a guest at the wedding himself. Some have speculated that this might have been the best red chair episode to date in light of this response and the story's unexpected twists and turns. Even though the cast members enjoyed it, picture the bride watching the episode. It's likely that someone who was present at the wedding saw the show because it's so well liked. Keep watching to see what happens next if you're curious about how we can be sure the story is true. You might be wondering how we know Sean didn't make up the entire story with such a ridiculous one. Well, there is no surefire way to know. A Twitter conversation lends the story some credibility. A Twitter user praised Sean's story and referred to it as the greatest red chair tale ever. The commenter on that particular post is what gives it the appearance of being true. They assert to have heard the tale earlier because Searland is a small nation. It would appear as though Sean was recounting incidents that really did actually occur before he appeared on the show if this person had actually heard the story before. The tale gained such a following that YouTuber Jason Gunn heard it. He was able to get in touch with Sean and inquire about his willingness to retell the tale on his podcast. Sean agreed and repeated the entire story. Even though Jason was aware of how the story ended, he couldn't help but laugh when he heard it again. The podcast would undoubtedly contain the story if the bride and everyone else she knew didn't watch it on the Norton show. Let's now examine some of the factors that make the story so beloved. Sean's story may have attracted so much attention in part because it differs from other stories about cheating. Men are frequently thought to be the unfaithful ones. But women are also capable of disloyalty. Stories like Sean's prove to the world's good men who have been wounded by women that trust can be difficult to have in any relationship. While this may be discouraging, it also makes the moment when you do find a reliable partner all the more special. It's only natural to want justice to be served when someone disrespects someone else. Although the divorce would provide the groom with justice from the court, it is understandable that he felt this wouldn't be sufficient. Being cheated on is humiliating and takes a huge hit to the ego. By revealing what the bride had done in front of everyone they were closest to, Sean prevented the story from being misconstrued by the bride. In other words, she had no choice but to own up to the truth. The groom could have gone another route. Well, it isn't exactly an eye for an eye kind of story. Being cheated on is embarrassing and severely damaging to one's ego. Sean stopped the bride from twisting the story by telling what the bride had done in front of everyone they were closest to. To put it in another way, she was forced to tell the truth. The bridegroom had other options. Well, it's not exactly a story about an eye for an eye. The bride definitely received a dose of her own medicine from the groom. Sometimes those who are being cheated on want to repay their partner by returning the favor and cheating on them. The groom would have sunk to the level of his bride if he had done this. He chose the more upscale room instead. By being honest, he gave her the same shock and discomfort that she gave him.